right, folks, welcome to another edition of Outspoken. I'm Dan Sileo, and what an incredible weekend of sports we have lined up. Obviously, the Final Four. Look at the week in sports, too. I mean, all the free agency talk in the NFL. Guys, fire the cannons. All right, man, without a doubt, let's start this off here with Jalen Hurts. What's going on in Philadelphia? I mean, how does a Super Bowl MVP, a quarterback that has been to the Super Bowl twice, how is his talent being questioned? How is his leadership being questioned? These stories that are coming out in ESPN and also coming out of the Philadelphia Inquirer, they're now questioning this guy's leadership. They're questioning Jalen Hurts and his ability to be able to run that football team. Some of the comments that have come out have been, he constantly changes the plays. Nobody in the locker room likes this guy. And his relationship with A.J. Brown obviously has put this thing front and center. I'll say it one more time, and as I've been saying this thing for the last 5 years, I think the dude's a caboose. I think that team is so talented. I think the talented guy in that organization is the general manager in Howie Roseman. Howie Roseman has put together one of the best rosters, if not the best roster in the National Football League for the last 5 years. Explain this to me. How can this offense be ranked 25th and 28th in the passing game when you're spending $250 million in assets? You got two wide receivers that are making $32 million and $25 million. You got a running back that's making $20 million. You got an entire offensive line that's coming in at around $85 million. $250 million, and your quarterback is the leader of a passing attack that's 28 during the Super Bowl year, and on top of that, this past season, 25. Jeff McClain, one of the head writers there for the Philadelphia Inquirer, came out and said that the owner's even on page with this. Think about this for a second here. Okay, so you're going into this upcoming 26 season, and you got word now that the owner's even saying we have no intention of extending Jalen Hurts in any way. That means this. Most of the time when you're looking to get money, you redo quarterbacks' contracts. You got a giant contract coming up in Jalen Carter, their defensive tackle. This guy's going to command somewhere in the range of around 35 to 40 million bucks. It would have been so easy to restructure the quarterback's contract. Instead, they come out and say we have no interest. Also, look at the entire coaching staff that has been fired on the offensive side. Everybody but the wide receiver and the running back coach have been blown out by Nick Sirianni. What does that do? They are 50-18. You know what this says? Without a doubt, they're telling you this. We can't win with this style of quarterback moving forward. He's either going to come aboard with what we're looking to do as we move the offense to a Sean McVay type of offense, or they're going to move on from him. 2026, in one of the articles in ESPN, they put it out, Jalen Hurts is at a crossroads. How can a guy that's gone to 2 Super Bowls be at a crossroads? How can a guy, without a doubt, be in a position right now where you're hearing this? This guy right here is at a crossroads. You got to be kidding me, right? A crossroads for a guy that's been to 2 Super Bowls, and in the last 4 years, he's 50-18. How's that possible? The owner's coming out already, and also the head coach has come out and said, look, we need to get this offense evolved. We need this offense to move forward. We need this offense to be better than what Jalen Hurts has delivered. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I think the dude's a caboose. He's got to produce this year, or guess what? They're building that offense for the next dude. All right, Tiger Woods. Here's the update. I'll tell you, man, I got to give it to this guy. I mean, this guy makes you want to go out and do a bump and some lines and some cocaine. So wait a minute. A judge comes out and says you can go to Zurich? What a party animal this guy is. You know what he's become? He's become a joke now. Dude, you're going to kill somebody. I'm not concerned about you anymore, dude. I'm concerned about my kid and you driving around in public. You might kill somebody. What a party guy. This guy right here is closer to being a crackhead than he is being the guy he was before. You know what happens to guys like Tiger Woods? you lose who you were. It defined you. Tiger Woods is no longer that guy. Hey, guy, you're no longer Tiger Woods. You're not the 15th major champion winner any longer. You're not that guy. You know what? Chasing Perkins waitresses and being 25 years old and being immature, that's one thing. You're 50 freaking years old now, and you're one of the faces of golf. And you're out flipping. I don't know anybody in my entire life that's ever rolled a car twice, let alone once. And you're giving this guy a hall pass. Take his license away from him. State of Florida. You want to talk about the Rooney Rule? How about taking this guy's license away from him before he kills himself or kills somebody else in a neighborhood? Stop giving these guys hall passes. Hold this guy accountable. Everybody in the media shrinks at this dude. Everybody in the media has painted a canvas for this guy and given this guy a hall pass. You got to be kidding me, man. Enough is enough. If that's you or me, we're under a bridge. We're under, guess what? We're under the jail. I don't get my driver's license back. I have my driver's license revoked. Him, on the other hand, you give him a hall pass. Dude, enough is enough. Like I said, you're closer to being a junkie than you are to being the guy that you once were. You're not that guy anymore, dude. You know how many athletes struggle with that? Because that stuff defines you. You know, when you're a great athlete and all the accomplishments you have in your life, you know what defines you in your life when you leave this earth? What kind of dad you are. What kind of husband you are. Take a look at that track record for Tiger Woods on the other end when he's off the course. The guy's a train wreck. You will never be defined by the things you did in your life. You're going to be defined by the impact you make on your family. The hardest thing in life is to be a father. Try acting like one, dude. And try acting like a leader. I'm sick and tired of this guy. Take his license away. And guess what? Stop giving him hall passes. Enough is enough, man. This guy's going to kill somebody. You know, it used to be we cared whether or not he died. Personally, I'm looking at whether or not he hurt somebody in a community. He's a danger in the community. Anybody that rolls his car twice, come on. I had a friend of mine by the name of Jerome Brown who rolled his car and killed himself. I mean, you've got to look at this in that light. All right, so this new ABS system that Major League Baseball has, I got to tell you, bring back the steroid era. Greatest era in all of baseball was the steroid era. Now we got a new one, kind of. This ABS system, the automated balls and strike system that is challenging. You know, back in the day, umpires used to have it from the letters to the knees, right? Now what you've done is you've made the strike zone smaller. What's that mean? More runs. They're juicing the game. Major League Baseball is juicing the game with this new ABS system. They want more runs. They want to see more scoring because you know why? Gambling. This is why they're doing it. Hey, if you just wanted to have the game juiced up, bring steroids back. Greatest era in Major League Baseball. Everyone had a villain. How great was that era? Sitting back watching big flies and souvenirs going into the stands. Man, without a doubt, bring that baby back. The ABS system, give me a break. All right. Hey, our great friends at Morgan & Morgan, the #1 injury law firm in all of America for a reason. You know why? Because they win. Over 30 years of dominance. That's right. There is no firm like it. Family run, family owned. I tell you about the family in Florida that ended up getting $350K. They ended up getting nearly $12 million in settlement. How about the family in Pennsylvania? $650. Then they ended up getting nearly $30 million in settlement. Do me a favor, log on, go to forthepeople.com/big sales or pound law 529. That's forthepeople.com/big sales or pound law 529. And do me a favor, you tell them Big Sales sent you. We got some drama in the women's side there in the Final Four. You bet, baby. Gino and Dawn. Coach Young next, right around the SportsGrid.
You wouldn't have your ex officiate your wedding.
Do you, Jake? Liar? Cheater? Gaslighter?
So why have anyone but America's largest injury law firm handle your injury case? With over $30 billion recovered for our clients, there's a reason to go big.
Gaslighter, coitus crier, he's got more red flags than a bullfighter's attire.
Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm.
How much do you think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too? And what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago, how much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Sileo, only on SportsGrid.
Well, I ended up adding this since our show started here, Rohit, but his points prop tonight at 20.5 is the same number from the Iowa State game. That's a bit of a mistake, right? When we consider the gap in opponents here. I think Peterson specifically steps up. He needs to. I think he kind of owes this team a great performance.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
I know that Florida lost at home to Auburn, and it's a real thing that happened. So you can't strike it from the record. But if you did, I think Florida's looked like the best team in college basketball for about 2 months. And I think there are a bunch of results that suggest that.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
Hey, man, what a great weekend in college basketball, the women and the men. We're going to get to the men here in a minute, but fireworks yesterday. Coach James Young joins us now here. I love talking some college hoop as we go around talking on the college level and also on the big level there with the NBA, man. All right, Coach, what was your takeaway with Dawn Staley and Gino Auriemma yesterday with that sideline? I mean, that's all people are talking about now.
And that's the sad part about it, Sills, is honestly, we're talking about that, and what we really should be talking about is the thorough domination that Dawn Staley and her Gamecocks had last night over Gino Auriemma. I besides maybe her, I haven't seen a team completely dismantle UConn that way when UConn can't score, maybe since the days of the last super big rivalry that Gino Auriemma had, and that's Pat Summitt. Him getting to the mountaintop. So, it takes away from what I thought was a fantastic performance, but I want to take people back to what I think as a coach. You have to play to your advantage. UConn versus South Carolina, skill work versus athleticism / toughness, right, defensively. You tell your kid you got to play a certain way. We play our way, and you adjust to the officials. It was obvious from the start that South Carolina was able to be aggressive on the ball, limit cuts, and really force UConn out of their rhythm. So Dawn played to it. Dawn probably played it to the referees, played it to his kids. Her kids adjusted. Gino's kids didn't. And that's why you saw Gino at the end of the third quarter of Holly Rowe really go tee off on the officials, because he knows that his team was getting out-muscled. And the only way to fix it is to try and find a way to turn it around. Well, if you know, early in the fourth quarter, there was a couple of quick bang, bang, bang whistles. So you thought, okay, well, the game's going to turn. The game was way too late, and the referee settled it back down. So I credit Dawn Staley for what she did. Now, about Gino. Gino's upset. There was no handshake. Traditionally, you come out 2-3 minutes before the game, you shake hands with the other coach, whoever, and hold staff, whoever comes out first or second does it. And then after player introductions to the NCAA tournament, coaches meet at half court, shake hands. Gino's like a hugger. Dawn didn't come out. So Gino was mad. But I'll tell you this right now. You think Gino was doing this if they won? No, of course not. Gino was upset. And I think this is a thing that maybe I'm reading this a different way than others. I think what it did is also change the narrative, and it deflected off the fact that Gino's team got their tail kicked last night, and the narrative has shifted to what happened post-game to what happened during the game. And sometimes when you're a coach, you do that to protect your kids.
Absolutely. So let's go over to a ruling that came down, basically maybe a mandate that came down from the White House. President Trump, he ended up putting an executive order in when it came to transfer portals. Now, Coach, I don't know if this is going to hold up in court or not, but what was your takeaway on that?
It's not going to hold up in court, Big Sills. I mean, I reached out. I actually did my show, The Coach's Edge with JY, which just got released on YouTube, that I really kind of got into it. It kind of broke it down. I spoke to some Power 4 coaches on the men's and women's side, mid-major coaches, people connected with the NIL, and even some, agents, not even agents, but, player families. Big Sills, here's the issue. I get the 5 and 5. This is what we used to do. Remember, back in the day, this is what happened when we were young. You had 5 years to play your 4 years. So I get President Trump's thought process. Let's get politics out of it, because I don't want to go there, because that's not my lane. I'm not paid to do that. It's more about, to me, there's an unequal, it's not apples to apples, how you're dealing with how the sport payouts are. For instance, you know college football better than anybody. College football playoff, that money is taken, and those shares are being sent by ESPN, the $7.8 billion deal, to 31-32, and it's funneled to the conferences. And then the conferences then decide how it gets distributed. If I'm not mistaken, I think Miami got a lion's share of the ACC payout because of their run. Other leagues do other things differently. Go to the men's and women's basketball, right? Big Sills, $1 billion a year in March Madness, $900 million comes from the NCAA tournament. And it's a 6-year unit model on how the money is paid out. But the NCAA, folks, ready for this? Keeps 75% of the revenue. They keep it themselves. Then the other 25% goes to the schools in a unit model. So what am I saying? The players have no stake. The players have no equity. And they're the ones that are going to be out there tonight trying to hit jump shots in front of 70,000 people in a football stadium. I've said it before, and maybe I'll get myself in trouble by saying this. The biggest mafia in the country is the NCAA. They got their hands on everything. AAU circuit, hands in it. Tournament, hands in it. The only thing they don't got their hands in is college football with the playoffs, which is smartly done by ESPN. But there still needs to be a talk. Ready, folks? Collective bargaining. I'm going there. We got to collectively bargain with these kids. And because I'll tell you right now, Phil Mortelli, your friend, I had him on last week, said it best. It is pay for play. So if we're doing it, let's go to the bargaining table and give these kids what they're worth.
I got to tell you, Coach, this is one of the reasons that the National Communist Association of America has, without a doubt, this thing has to be burned down to the ground, because it's one of the reasons why they go after college football eligibility like they did with Trinidad Chambliss, is because they want to have their hands in that pie when it comes to the regular season games, because that's where they get their money. Like you say, in the playoff, they do not get their money. So we're going to continue conversation about the Final Four. I want to get Coach's thoughts on that. Also, I want to get his thoughts on Jaden Ivey and get his thoughts on what the NBA did with him. We'll go down that lane. Also, Cooper Flagg, 19 years of age. This dude ends up coming in, and this guy ends up dropping 50 points. We'll end up talking a little bit more about that. Obviously, also, too, 33% of the players in the Stars don't play in NBA games. I'll explain that right here on SportsGrid.
So much to get into.
So much to get into, so little time. Listen, this is a time of year where it's great basketball. Teams that have to be at their best, some teams at their best for 40 minutes, some teams at their best for 36 minutes. But at the end of the day, you got to play your best 40. Otherwise, you're going home like we saw over the last couple of days.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
Why are all these contracts being signed, folks? Yes, the players are talented. Yes, they are deserving of it, but it's such goodwill to hand out these buyout arbitration contracts for these young players this time of the year, right before opening day, to get all their fans excited. And notice, right before the Pirates' home opener, not before opening day, before their home opener, it's a setup.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Kansas City trading as a favorite, Joe. Do we think that's the possibility of that first game?
Yeah, they should make it the Jets, Donnie, so they can guarantee a win in front of their fans to open up the set. I'm just saying. I mean, that's what I would do. But no, I mean, ideally the NFL would love a Kansas City reunion at Buffalo in the new stadium.
Prediction Markets Edge, only on SportsGrid.
There's a basketball player who's 7'9". He's insignificant on his team. And quite frankly, I don't know if he goes Division 1, 2, or 3 at this point and will be significant. Joe, how can you be 7'9" and not be able to get on the court in college basketball? Shouldn't he be maybe, I don't know, the most dominant shot blocker in the history? I watched Manu Bol be a really good player at times in the NBA.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Without a doubt, there is a ton of news in basketball. Final Four, we got to get to that. Then some NBA news here. Coach James Young joins us as he does each and every single week here. And I'll ask you, Coach, I mean, let's start it off. Illinois, UConn. Who you got?
I love UConn, and maybe this is my Northeast New Jersey Dan Hurley bias. Knowing the Hurley family, but I just look at this team and think that Dan will have this team on another level. Like if a guy gets open 3-point shot, they may not even be able to get a meal on the way home. I mean, this guy's going to have these guys ready to play. And I look at the experience of Dan Hurley being in this situation. The fact that Alex Karaban is all-time winningest player in the history of UConn men's basketball. Tarish Reed has been a load as of late. And I think the Balkan boys ain't never seen a Tarish Reed before. They're going to find out today. If you ask me who I like to win one of the two games, what team I feel the most comfortable saying, I do like UConn because I think the ability to bomb away from Illinois, I think it's going to be trouble shooting at a football stadium. I think they don't turn enough people up or turn over people enough. I think Reed will score inside, open up the perimeter. UConn wins.
I'll tell you, man, Jimmy Johnson one day, we didn't play very well against the Commanders. We didn't have a meal on the way home. I'll just put it out there for you like that. All right, let's go in. Let's go into the rock fight here. Arizona and Michigan. Who do you like there?
You know, this is the harder game to predict because if you go look at KenPom, Big Seals, they're so evenly matched on every metric, like defensive efficiency, offensive efficiency, turnover percentage, rebound percentage. You can't find a lane. So when you have two superior teams playing like this, here's why I look at. I look at the game to be very slow starting. So if you're betting the game, I would look at maybe under 73.5 in the first half. Why? Lean on defense. It's going to be a boxing match, and I'm not talking Hagler Hearns, right? I'm talking jab, duck, jab, counterpunch. So which means you may have the first 5 to 8 minutes where they just may have to feel each other out because they're so great offensively. Defense holds. I also maintain, folks, if you ever try to just go try and shoot the ball in an arena where the backdrop is way further than what they're accustomed to. That's really hard in a football stadium. I like under in the first half. Should be a really, really good game. Game opens up in the second half, though.
All right, let's go to the NBA here. What was your take on the Jaden Ivey story there, where they released the guy and they said conduct detrimental to the team and to the league with his stance on Pride Month. What was your takeaway on how they handled this?
Here's the thing, Big Sills, and I am one of the people that it kind of combines two things that I really don't talk about publicly, but I'll put it this way: I'm not big about talking about politics on air or religion, but I will say this, and you can get where I'm going. I do believe in that you have a freedom of speech. If the guy needs help, let's get him help. I don't know if releasing him is going to help him. This is a kid that came into the league out of Purdue, and we thought, holy smokes, this kid's going to be a star. It hasn't worked out. Maybe something's not right with him. I'd rather see Chicago talk to him and say, hey, do you need help? Let's get you the help that you need to see if there's something going on. I don't believe in that because I feel like we still should have freedom of speech.
And again, like you said, I mean, where's the NBA Players Association in this conversation? Like you said, I don't care really much about your religion, your politics, your sexuality. I don't care. Can you play? Let me ask you this question. Yahoo came out with a study that said that in the 200 games so far, plus that have been played, only 33% of the stars play on both sides on each team when they go to a game. What's your takeaway on that? That when you show up to an arena, if you're a fan, only 33% of the time these guys are going to be on the court full units. Where does Adam Silver go with this?
And Big Sills, that's the problem. That's why you instituted the 65-game rule in regards to being eligible for postseason awards, because that ties you into getting yourself into the Supermax and making more money. It sucks for the fans. Fans are paying a lot of money to go see games. I'll be honest with you, I don't go to see games anymore because I can't afford to spend a boatload of money sending my kids to go see Steph Curry play if I don't know Steph Curry's going to play because of this. And then look at what's going on in Milwaukee. I mean, you got Giannis arguing with the Bucks if he's eligible to play because maybe the Bucks are tanking. This is where we're at. We got to fix getting him to participate. But we have to fix the tanking issue because when it gets to the end of the season, Big Sales, I think they actually go hand in hand.
Man, that's unbelievable that you got to coax guys to play, Coach, for you to be able to be eligible for postseason awards like Defensive Player of the Year and Offensive Player of the Year. I mean, it's crazy here. Great stuff, Coach. Ricky Henderson has nothing on my coach. That's for dang sure. The great Tim Brando is next, right here on SportsGrid.
I just picked it.
There is no doubt the NCAA delivers, and it delivers each and every single year. One of the greatest sporting events in all of America for a reason. The drama. Hey, and now we're starting to see it also on the women's side. I love villains in sports. We saw a little bit of that yesterday with Dawn Staley and with Gina Auriemma in the women's side in the Final Four. I love that. By the way, if you go back years when Gino was doing this to Pat Summitt, when Pat Summitt was at Tennessee, this is what made compelling and really, without a doubt, great drama when it came to having what this tournament is all about. Make no mistake about it, my friends. It is one of the greatest sporting events of all time is the NCAA tournament. And without a doubt, one of my friends, I love talking sports with him, and he is one of my friends. We go back a long way. My friend, Tim Brando, joins us now. Tim, how you doing? And sure enough, this NCAA tournament, man, this thing delivers, doesn't it?
It does, Sills. Good to be with you.
Man, what makes this tournament so compelling, Tim?
Well, I've been involved with the NCAA tournament since I joined ESPN in 1985 and began hosting the first two rounds when the first two rounds weren't even televised on over-the-air networks. CBS was re-airing games after the local news, and the first two rounds were on ESPN all the way through 1990, and it was a lot of fun then. And then when I joined CBS in '96, I had 18 years of doing the tournament, and including the second round into the Final Four with the great Al McGuire in '98, and just some of the greatest moments of my career are connected to this tournament. So I'm very partial to it, Dan. It is, in my opinion, for broadcasters, the most daunting, taxing broadcasting assignment you can get. 4 games, 8 teams in one day in the first round, the first Thursdays and Fridays. But it's also the most exhilarating because you don't know what might happen. They say March Madness for a reason. Even in a year when they're trying to talk about chalk and the separation between major conferences and mid-majors, and a lot of that's still going on, we still get incredible moments that happen at the end. All you have to do is go back to how UConn made it there today. That'll tell you a lot because it can happen at any time. But the reason why it's, I believe, the greatest sporting event in America today is because it does encapsulate all of the country. When you have 68 teams and you have regions of the country with games going everywhere, you have teams and fans of schools, and even if the fans aren't alums, they're rooting for their home state, or they're rooting for the college that's closest to them, or maybe they know somebody on the team. There's just so many players and people involved in it. And then if you lose, if your team gets knocked out, then you might be rooting for the team that beat you. So you can say, well, we lost to the national champions, that kind of thing. The betting public, the sports betting factor now has come into play, and that's only enhanced the viewership and made it even bigger. I think that's why it is the premier domestic sporting event in the country, without a doubt, and has been really for my entire career, which goes past, as you know, now into 41 years, moving towards 50. So that's how I feel about it. And I'm not, I haven't called an NCAA tournament game since 2013. And yet it's funny, this time of year, I'll be getting calls. Hey, Tim, what region do you have today? And it's, people still identify me with that tournament. I just got back from the Crown in Vegas, which was another great idea that my bosses at Fox had. And smartly, they've got 2 semifinals of, those 8 teams that were invited to that, all out of power conferences. They're playing in Vegas today, and if you're not into pregame for the Final Four, you got live college basketball to watch and to bet on if you like, with some pretty compelling stories.
Absolutely. And by the way, speaking of Fox, later on, we're going to have David Hill on, the creator of Fox Sports. He'll be joining me a little bit later on. Hey, Tim, do you think it should expand, or do you like the number where it is right now, the NCAA tournament?
No, we don't need to expand this tournament. It is perfect. Okay, don't mess with perfection. This tournament is tremendous. What we need to do, Dan, is we need to move the calendar. I think you and I have had this conversation about football, and since you mentioned it, I'm going to throw this out. I want to applaud Greg Byrne, the athletic director of Alabama, who yesterday, you may have read, said, we've got 9 conference games now. We do not need an SEC championship game anymore. It ran its course. It's now outdated. We don't need that. And the reason he said it is because he believes, and I agree with him, that they need to expand the college football playoff to 16, and I believe eventually to 24. And that is the direction that they're going to go in. By having a conference championship game in football, you now have moved the calendar further back, which in football we don't need. We need the calendar moved up. College football needs to start in early August. It needs to end at or around New Year's Day, the way it did when you were playing, because that's when the college football, that's the history and the tradition of the college football championship, and it's the history and tradition of the players and the fans. But in order to get a playoff in that would amass 16 teams and finish on time and not get in the way of the NFL playoffs, where from a PR standpoint, it's lost. We lose college football over that long layoff that we have between semifinals and finals. In basketball, we need to do just the opposite, Dan. We need to expand and move back the calendar. We shouldn't have a meaningful college basketball game until after Thanksgiving, because when fans are watching college football, they don't want to watch basketball. Some of the most important games in basketball that help these teams get in the tournament, they're played in November, in places like the Bahamas. What are they going to do next? Have a tournament in the UAE? I mean, we don't need that. People aren't watching. So we need to move the calendar back in basketball, start it after Thanksgiving. And this outdated view that we have to have the tournament concluded in time for the azaleas to blossom at Augusta National is a joke. We can move this thing back a couple of weeks and have the basketball's regular season should get more attention. The playoffs, the tournament is already engulfed the regular season of basketball. I mean, we need more attention served to the regular season so the fans know a little something about these teams. How many times you get the brackets, Dan, and you go, okay, who's good? I have no idea. That's why people can't accurately predict or have a feeling about the tournament, because they haven't watched as much, the casual fan especially. But viewership is up across the board for the regular season. They're having record-breaking ratings this year for live college basketball and live football. But we need to move the calendar forward in football. We need to move it backward in basketball. And listen, the championship is on TBS today, not CBS. So what's the rush? I mean, you're going to tell me that we can't live in a world where the Masters is taking place while the NCAA tournament's going on? That's garbage. That's an outdated dinosaur thought process.
Absolutely. I'm going to continue more conversation with also a part of one of the things that made Tim Brando great was covering college football, not just the spanning of the globe, as my friend Jim McKay would say back in the day. But, man, I'll tell you what, Tim and I go back a long way. The very first broadcast in the history of ESPN, he and I were involved in with Miami, South Carolina. And to see where the sport has grown right now, folks, Tim Brando has been there for the entire ride, and we're going to talk to our friend and get his thoughts on the 12-team tournament. We're going to talk also about NIL. We're going to talk about the transfer portal, what the president just came up with, saying that he's going to put an executive order. I don't believe that will hold up in court. I am going to get my friend Tim Brando's thoughts on that all next, folks. Make no mistake about it. Look at the monies that are being generated in college sports right now, and look at the TV ratings. All this is next with the legendary Tim Brando, right here on SportsGrid.
You wouldn't have your ex officiate your wedding.
Do you, Jake? Liar? Cheater? Gaslighter?
So why have anyone but America's largest injury law firm handle your injury case? With over $30 billion recovered for our clients, there's a reason to go big.
Gaslighter, coitus crier, he's got more red flags than a bullfighter's attire.
Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm.
How much do you think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too? And what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago, how much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Sileo, only on SportsGrid.
Well, I ended up adding this since our show started here, Rohit, but his points prop tonight at 20.5 is the same number from the Iowa State game. That's a bit of a mistake, right? When we consider the gap in opponents here, I think Peterson specifically steps up. He needs to. I think he kind of owes this team a great performance.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
I know that Florida lost at home to Auburn, and it's a real thing that happened. So you can't strike it from the record. But if you did, I think Florida's looked like the best team in college basketball for about 2 months. And I think there are a bunch of results that suggest that.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
The ever-changing landscape of college sports, especially college football. And I want to show you two guys. I want to show you two of my guys here. You ready for this here? And I'm going to ask Tim Brando a question here. These are my 2 national championship rings right here for the University of Miami. Right here, Tim. So I'll ask you a question, Tim. You think it's harder right now to win a national championship in college football than it was, say, back in my day because of this tournament? I mean, look, you had to play a bowl game. You had a really challenging schedule back in my day. But that tournament, my school, Miami, had to go Ole Miss, Ohio State, A&M, and all that. I think it's harder. Do you think it's harder today to win a national championship in college football?
Why do you think Saban got out when he did?
Right on.
Listen, Dan. I just turned 70, okay? And I've still got a lot of tread left on my tires. And I'm happily here to report to all the Brando haters on social media, I'm not going anywhere, okay? I still love what I do. And I think that Nick Saban would still probably be coaching because he loves what he did. But the task at hand and the job for all these coaches now is so much more difficult. And when you're plus 70, maybe you want to have a little time off in the spring. Okay? Today at Creighton, a coach that was really a bad call away from a Final Four just a couple of years ago, Coach Greg McDermott is walking away after 16 years. He's the winningest coach at Creighton. And he's going to play in the crown. And you know what? I think he's a sentimental favorite to maybe win it. Maybe his players will play hard for him. But he would probably still be coaching at Creighton were it not for the fact that every coach in America in college basketball, as soon as this Final Four is over, their season just begins in the portal. I mean, there's really no time off. You might get 2 weeks off in basketball. And in football, those coaches, and you remember this, you know how much Spurrier loved to have his time off to go play golf. You can't do that anymore. Yeah. There's just no time for it, all right? And the responsibilities for coaches, as you know, a little bit greater than that of a broadcaster. We have to manage our families and our time and our bodies a little bit to stay fresh, but we're not responsible for all those players and trying to help them. And I do think that coaches, for the most part, want to still, even if in this transactional period, they still want to be transformative in the lives of the players, even if they have them for a year or two instead of 4. It's just much harder to do. And and that's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons why I think that a lot of guys have gotten out. Nick, at the top of that list, okay. There were times, and by the way, for fans that say that are and the people that are my age and older that want to go back, we're not bringing the ship back into the dock. That's not happening. It sailed. There's way too much at stake financially for these schools. They know that, and that's one of the reasons why we've got to do some of this. I know you want to go down the road of what the president just did, and I'm fine with talking about that. But we do need to regulate what's transpiring, because while the money is magnificent and the sport has flourished and become the second most popular sport in America without a doubt, it's not sustainable what's taking place, and we got to do something about it. I think in large measure, these coaches that have left because they feel like that's not the job they signed up for. Now, those that have stayed are fine with embracing it and lean into it. And by the way, if you don't lean into it, you're not going to be successful.
Absolutely here. Well, let's go with what the president did with that executive order in the transfer portal. Do you think it holds up, one? And do you think at least his premise of trying to stop as many portal transfers, I mean, there's got to be some type of guardrails. I guess that's what people are trying to figure out right now, Tim.
Yeah, I don't think it would hold up in court. I do think, though, that this president, and listen, full disclosure, I'm a Republican. I voted for the man. I am not a right-wing radical by any stretch, and I don't always agree with the president. I don't believe that this will hold up in court, but I do believe that he's really serious about sports, because he's a sports fan. He always has been. I first met President Trump when I was doing USFL games, when I began at ESPN. And what a break that was for me. I got to call Herschel Walker's record-breaking run when he broke, at the time, Eric Dickerson's single-season rushing record. I was 29 years old. I was thrilled. It was one of the most enjoyable events I'd had up until that point in my career. But the president does care about all sports, male and female. He really does. I think what he wanted to do by having this executive order was cast more attention towards it and light up Congress, because for a long time, Cruz and several others, Tommy Tuberville, a few others, guys you know well, have been trying to, and have gotten some across the aisle to listen to them about what needs to be done to protect the future, long-term future of college football. Now, I don't always agree with Tommy Tuberville either politically, all right? But at the same time, I do think that we do have to have some bipartisan support for a bill to help regulate it. We need to make sure that a collective bargaining agreement can be signed, and you got to have player representation here in order to do it. If the transfer thing is out of whack, now you can be allowed to transfer one time. I do think if a coach leaves, the player automatically should have an additional opportunity to transfer. I think you would agree with that too.
Yeah,
because
completely.
the player is always going to the school for the coach, because that's been going on forever. So he should be allowed another one in that regard. So one transfer should be allowed only, but a second transfer if the coach happens to leave, because if he wants to go for more money, then the player certainly has the opportunity to do the same thing.
Absolutely. You mentioned Coach Tommy Tuberville. Tommy Tuberville, believe it or not, was on Jimmy Johnson's coaching staff back in the day.
Yeah.
And him and Chuck Pagano used to do bed checks. And now he's a senator of the United States of America. Yeah. And I text him all the time. I go, you and Coach Pagano were like the GAs on those Miami teams back in the day. I couldn't believe how good our coaching staffs were. Tim, we go back a long way. Thank you so much for doing this, my friend. I hope we can catch up again, right? You hear Tim?
Dan, feel free. You bet.
Thank you so much, Tim. I appreciate it. The legendary Tim Brando. Absolutely. Those guys were checking beds back in the day. Sills, are you in? No. All right, folks. Sileo says, I got to tell you, if Shohei Ohtani was pitching during Babe Ruth's era, he'd be throwing perfect games every outing. I'll explain. We'll do that next right here on SportsGrid.
so much to get into.
So much to get into, so little time. Listen, this is a time of year where it's great basketball. Teams that have to be at their best, some teams at their best for 40 minutes, some teams at their best for 36 minutes. But at the end of the day, you got to play your best 40. Otherwise, you're going home like we saw over the last couple of days.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
Why are all these contracts being signed, folks? Yes, the players are talented. Yes, they are deserving of it, but it's such goodwill to hand out these buyout arbitration contracts for these young players this time of the year, right before opening day, to get all their fans excited. And notice, right before the Pirates' home opener, not before opening day, before their home opener, to set up.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Kansas City trading as a favorite, Joe. Do we think that's the possibility of that first game?
Yeah, they should make it the Jets, Donnie, so they can guarantee a win in front of their fans to open up the set. I'm just saying. I mean, that's what I would do. But no, I mean, ideally the NFL would love a Kansas City reunion at Buffalo in the new stadium.
Prediction Markets Edge, only on SportsGrid.
There's a basketball player who's 7'9". He's insignificant on his team. And quite frankly, I don't know if he goes Division 1, 2, or 3 at this point and will be significant. Joe, how can you be 7'9" and not be able to get on the court in college basketball? Shouldn't he be maybe, I don't know, the most dominant shot blocker in the history? I watched Manu Bol be a really good player at times in the NBA.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, folks, I love Major League Baseball and the history of Major League Baseball. I really do. I grew up a Major League Baseball fan. You know, people are like, well, you play pro ball. You must love football more than you did baseball. As a kid, I did not. I grew up in the Northeast, and I loved watching the Yankees and the Mets when I was growing up, and those were my teams. I was one of those geeks back in the day. The history of Major League Baseball, go down the list, 367, all-time leading batting average for Ty Cobb, the 500-plus wins for Cy Young. We all know those records. Ricky Henderson's tremendous number of 1,400 stolen bases, the 762 by Bonds. You go and do all of that. However, let's do this and stop being romantic about the past of baseball when it comes to Shohei Ohtani. Dude, if Shohei Ohtani pitched during the era of Babe Ruth, he'd pitch a perfect game every outing. This guy's the greatest baseball player I've ever seen. This guy goes 6 1/3 the other day, 6 strikeouts, and he looks like the best arm in baseball. What does he do a couple of years ago? He creates a new catalog, and he creates a new area where in baseball, you got now a 50 home run hitter and a 50 stolen base guy, the only dude ever to do this. Before it was 30-30, then it was 40-40, and now you got a guy who's on the mound throwing BBs at 102 miles an hour. And he turns around and he can hit a 3-seam slider, and he hits it for 475 feet. I've never seen anything like this. Look, I think the best player I've ever seen is Barry Bonds. I covered the San Francisco Giants back in the day when I was out west, and I'm there on the flagship station, and Barry Bonds is the greatest player I've ever seen. But this dude here is now taking that seat. I've never seen anything like it. Shohei Ohtani, again, if he played in the era of Ruth, dude, do you know you have to speed up, you have to speed up the clips that we see of Ruth, because it took him about 8 weeks to get around the base paths. Those guys were like smoking. Those guys were drinking. Those guys were never caring about the conditioning that they had. Come on, man. Plus the diversity in the sport itself. I mean, it was a fat white guy drinking league back in the day that had no diversity in it. You put diversity in it, and now you put a guy like Ohtani back in that time. Come on, man. I know we talk about Babe Ruth. We talk about DiMaggio. We talk about all these guys. You put Shohei Ohtani in any one of those eras, he's the best player in that era, and it ain't close. Remember something. When Babe Ruth was pitching for the Red Sox, right? he was a pitcher, but he really didn't hit until the final year when he was in Boston, where he hit 29 home runs. Then he would hit 50 bombs his final season before he got traded to the Yankees in 23. Well, you know what? You put him in that era, nobody's better than Ohtani. Ohtani's the greatest talent I've ever seen. There is nobody in the room. Stop with the past. Stop with the history. Look, Ted Williams and all those guys were tremendous baseball players. Tremendous. They were great for their era. This guy is a generational dude. This is a once-in-a-lifetime thing that baseball has. You know, Stephen A. Smith said that a Japanese-born player could never be the face of Major League Baseball because he was born in another country. I'm like, what are you, nuts? This guy is appointment-setting television. Every time this dude toes the rubber or he's in the plate, I'm watching this guy. I stop what I'm doing because he's appointment setting. This guy is and by the way, the Dodgers have now become the centerpiece in all of sports and baseball. That's the team you want to watch because Shohei Ohtani is on that team. Babe Ruth. Really? Nobody in their right mind could ever think that Babe Ruth is a better player than Shohei Ohtani. And I know, I get it. I get the conversation all the time. Well, guess what? Just like Bob Cousy, and you take a look at some of the guys that played a point today in the NBA. Bob Cousy was playing against plumbers, like J.J. Redick says. J.J. Redick's right. So we're not the players that you see in today's game. The players care more about their health. They care more about their conditioning. Hey, if you want to throw shade on all that, I've never seen anything like Shohei Ohtani. Every single time we see him go on the mound, every time we see him at the plate, you think there's any coincidence that the television ratings were off the charts last year? Not just the fact that the Dodgers were making it happen, but Hoss, watching Ohtani, this guy's the best player of all time. I don't think there's any debate. I've never seen anything like it. Remember, Ruth didn't do this at the same time of what he's doing. This guy is a legitimate two-way star. You know, again, you know, when you watch Deion Sanders, he was a two-sport guy. Same thing with Bo Jackson. I think what he's doing is even harder. He is a legendary player at the plate, and now he's becoming a legendary arm in the game all at the same time. Don't ever tell me this guy's not the best ball player in Major League Baseball history, because he really is. David Berman, we will talk with him. Top of hour number 2 next, right here on SportsGrid. love it here. Okay, so he's a South Florida guy, and he knows now that I'm a Miami guy. So here we're rolling here. We got it going on with David Behrman here. And David, I got to tell you, I'm glad to hear that. South Florida, man, we're all good. University
Yes,
of
sir.
Miami, and I love it here. Right?
Yeah, I was basically raised at the Orange Bowl. Both my parents went there, and I was raised in that area, going to all the Hurricane games in the 80s and 90s in their prime. And then I turned Benedict Arnold and went to the University of Florida, as you can see behind me. So I have that in me. Not everybody's happy with that, but at the same time, I didn't want to, pay tuition the rest of my life. So I went away to Gainesville, hopped on the Gator Express, and then that's where I've been for the last 20 years. So.
Well, I hear they have a really good alligator farm up there. I don't know about anything else, but I know they got an alligator farm. All right. So let's stay in Florida here and this really unfortunate story here with Tiger Woods. What's your takeaway on how this thing's been handled, how the PGA handled it, and what's next going forward?
Well, I think it's obviously unfortunate. Tiger has issues going on, demons in his head. He is one of the most decorated athletes of all time. And it's unfortunate that you take a guy with that big of a legacy and it falls like this. You had the scandal with the wife and the stuff that was going on in 2009 and 2010, came back from that, played well again, then had some issues with DUIs and, the accidents with his leg, and then came back again. He won another Masters in between all that. He's still going to go down as the greatest golfer of all time, even if he's not going to beat Jack or win any events ever. But he has that other thing that is going to be a mark on his legacy. And listen, I've spoken to a lot of people who know psychologically what athletes go through over time. And it's no secret that Tiger isolated himself for his entire life. He had a small circle, didn't have many friends, didn't talk to the public as a player. So he basically was secluded his entire life, even while becoming one of the best athletes of all time. And even Michael Jordan has wrote about some of the issues that he had in different ways because he was one of the most prominent athletes. Now, I think the thing that people are overlooking, and this is by no means whatsoever, Dan, an excuse. The guy has had 30 some odd surgeries over time, and that doesn't give him any excuse to be on pain meds or be addicted to them. But think about what he's going through pain-wise just to get up every single morning. The guy was on national TV 3 days prior to that, playing golf indoors, and the TV ratings went through the roof. The whole thing is about Tiger. Everything in golf has been about Tiger. A lot of pressure, a lot of injuries. He's got a lot to live up to, but it does not excuse the behavior. He's lucky that no one was injured. He's lucky that no one died in that, and he's got to get some help to make sure he's not taking those things and driving. And then I'll leave you with one more thing with this Tiger thing. This was my first instinct when I heard it. It was my first instinct when I heard it in 2001. It was my first instinct when I heard it when he fell asleep at the wheel. You're a $1 billion athlete. Pay someone to drive. Just pay someone to drive you. You want to be alone in your thoughts, sit in the back seat. Be alone in your thoughts, because what you don't want to do is be alone in the back of that police car either.
Absolutely. And well, you mentioned legacy, David. Let me ask you, who do you think has meant more to the exposure? And I mean exposure, not winning, but exposure of golf. Arnold Palmer or Tiger Woods?
I would say overall Tiger Woods, because it was a different era when we have more channels, bigger TV, satellite, social media. The second half of Tiger's career was front and center with social media, for better or for worse. And he grew the game in a way that all due credit to Arnold Palmer. Listen, my son's first name is Palmer for a reason. All due credit to Arnie. He took the game to another level with Jack, wasn't just Arnie, and got a lot of eyeballs on it. But the eyeballs that were on it were of one type of fan. A majority of, white people and rich people who loved watching golf. That's what Arnie brought in. Tiger brought in a whole new dynamic, whether it was African-American, whether it was Asian, he brought in a whole nother element to golf, not to mention the money involved. You look at what Arnie made in his career versus what Tiger and Phil and even others make in their career. That's because of the Tiger impact. Arnie may go down just as decorated as Tiger, but Arnie didn't take the tour to a level where you could be the 116th best golfer in the world and you're a millionaire. That was not going on in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, Arnie. So it's just a whole nother level.
Let's do a bounce pass here and go to the tournament here. Obviously, I mean, everyone's looking at UConn right now. I love villains in sports, and boy, is Dan Hurley. He just looks like a villain. And, you know, you and I, you live in Connecticut. I'm from Connecticut, and I root for UConn, and I'm rooting for UConn here. Let's start here with Illinois and UConn. How do you see this game playing out?
I think if you look at the two teams top to bottom, just looking at it on paper, I would say that Illinois is the better team, even though UConn won the game by 13 earlier this season. That's a whole nother time of the year in November. On paper, Illinois is the best team, better team in this matchup in terms of bigger, better shooters. They're just a better team. But UConn does not lose. Like, if anybody has figured that out yet, Dan Hurley and UConn do not lose. They've won 17 of 18 tournament games. They haven't lost past the Sweet 16 yet. They got 2 national titles. They're in their 3rd Final Four. And by the way, they've covered in 16 of 17 games, which is unheard of. It's one thing to win them, but they've covered. And obviously the one team they lost to, you see it behind me, the University of Florida, who won it all last year. Their one loss was by 2 points to a team that wound up winning the title. So betting or picking against Dan Hurley and UConn is not a good idea. And I say that from a guy who's involved in sports betting. But I do think Illinois is the better team, and there's the reason why they're favored. And I actually agree with the line by Illinois being a 1.5 to 2.5 point favorite. I just would never pick against UConn. And Dan, not to throw an excuse out there, but I live in the state of Connecticut, as you know, and you can't bet on UConn. Those games are not on the board. I opened my DraftKings and FanDuel app, and there's only one game tonight. So I'm off the hook because I don't technically have to play the game. But if I were to bet on it, I would not bet against UConn, because if you did, you'd be bankrupt by now, because they have covered in 16 of the last 17 tournament games. They probably win again. But if I was betting a bracket, I would go Illinois and Arizona in these 2 games.
All right. How about the rock fight between Arizona and Michigan? Who do you like there?
I can't wait for this game. This is the game that everybody wanted to see. I like Arizona. I think in this case, the wrong team is favored. But we're splitting hairs here. These are the 2 best teams in the country. Obviously, the 2 best teams in the country left. They've been number 1, both of them. They've both been number 2. Ken Palm ratings have them 1 and 2. Almost every analytics site you go to have them 1 and 2. The difference to me, Dan, is the depth. Arizona has 7 players averaging 8 points or more. That's something you never see. You could absolutely Tommy Lloyd can go as deep as he wants on his bench, a rotation of 8 deep. They got tremendous talent, tremendous depth. They can sub in at any time, and they have a playmaker on the field. I mean, the Big 12 Player of the Year was 3rd in scoring on this team. Think about that. 3rd in scoring on this team. They've also played more consistently than Michigan. And again, these are razor-thin margins, but a big stat that I saw the other day that my guy Eric Cohen gave me is Arizona has not played 1 possession this year with the game out of hand or decided. There's been no garbage time for Arizona. They have 2 losses to 2 ranked teams in the same week, and they're by a combined 7 points. This team has yet to play 1 possession all season with the game decided already. Michigan, solid, has played 6 possessions with games decided because they lost 1 game by double digits. It's a thin margin, but I'm going with Arizona by a hair here.
Man, I'll tell you, there's no question. This thing's going to be a rock fight. 2 best teams in the country, man, Arizona and Michigan. It's going to be a hell of a national title game on Monday, no doubt. Don't forget my friends at Morgan & Morgan, the #1 injury law firm in all of America for a reason. It is because they win. Family-owned, family-run. I told you about the family in Florida that was initially offered $350K. They ended up getting nearly $12 million settlement. How about this one here? They were initially offered down in Pennsylvania $650K. They got nearly $20 million in settlement. Folks, this will be the easiest decision you ever make in your life. Go to forthepeople.com/big sales or pound law 529. That's forthepeople.com/big sales or pound law 529. And do me a favor, you make sure you tell them Big Sil sent you. There's no question about it. The tournament has delivered, and it is going to be a great, great Saturday in college basketball. We'll see who ends up making it to the national championship game on Monday. We're going to switch gears with David, and we're going to talk some NFL. Is Fernando Mendoza the #1 pick in the draft? And also, how did Ty Simpson fly up the draft board? We'll do that next. Right here on SportsGrid.
I know you didn't. Talk. I'm innocent. Got the wrong guy. It wasn't me. I didn't do anything. Okay, it was me. I did it.
Bringing an owl to an interrogation? That's a power move.
Every time.
Yeah. Hiring America's largest injury law firm for your injury? That's also a power move. Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm.
How much do you think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too? And what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago, how much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Sileo, only on SportsGrid.
Well, I ended up adding this since our show started here, Rohit, but his points prop tonight at 20.5 is the same number from the Iowa State game. That's a bit of a mistake, right? When we consider the gap in opponents here. I think Peterson specifically steps up. He needs to. I think he kind of owes this team a great performance.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
I know that Florida lost at home to Auburn, and it's a real thing that happened. So you can't strike it from the record. But if you did, I think Florida's looked like the best team in college basketball for about 2 months. And I think there are a bunch of results that suggest that.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
Okay, you know you're getting old when your guest that you have on with you sitting in the stands and he's 7 years old. And now we're talking about the days back in the Orange Bowl here, but those are some great times that old lady was in it there at the Orange Bowl.
It was great. I mean, that was my entire childhood. My parents were both high school teachers in Miami, so one of them would take me to the Friday night game at either Miami Beach or North Miami High School. Saturdays were at the Orange Bowl, and Sundays were at, the Orange Bowl and then Joe Robbie Stadium for the Dolphins. So literally spent my entire childhood at the Orange Bowl, that closed end zone with the family section. 2 adults, 3 kids can go for the family season tickets. Every game right there from the closed end zone. I watched you play for 4 years. I was a kid, and I was telling you during the break, I got a rude introduction. I was at the Frank Wright largest comeback in college football history game was my first game, and then the next one was Hail Flutie. But then they didn't lose for the next 10 years, so we kind of made up for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll say, man, that's great stuff here. And a lot of those teams had great superstar players on them. And this upcoming NFL draft, do you think it's a strong draft? Do you think it's a weak draft? Do you think it's a mediocre draft?
The draft is usually built around the quarterbacks, and I just don't see any standout future Hall of Famer quarterbacks in this draft. So I'm going to call it a mediocre draft, because without the studs at the top and I know we're going to talk about a couple of them in a minute, the quarterbacks, you're kind of forcing squares into circular holes or circles into square pegs. It's not the deepest draft. Next year is going to be significantly better and deeper, but there is talent in this draft. There always is. It's just not at the top where you can close your eyes and say, you know what? Peyton Manning's going to be the number 1 or number 2 pick. I like it. Can't go wrong there, although people did think Ryan Leaf. But you know what I mean. It doesn't have that Trevor Lawrence, Peyton Manning, or even any of the quarterbacks from recent times, Joe Burrow, etc. Just not seeing that at the top.
Let's go Eagles here. What do you think Howie Roseman does in the draft? He's done very well over the last 5 years in tooling that team and building one of the better rosters in the National Football League. Where do you see the Eagles going?
I think it depends on what happens between now and draft day with A.J. Brown. If they trade A.J. Brown, you could be looking at getting a wide receiver like Jordan Tyson from ASU down in the second half of the first round. Also, it depends on what you trade A.J. Brown for. Maybe you get somehow a 1 pick and you move up in the draft. But if they stay straight, I think they're going to need either an O-line, because eventually you're going to have to replace Lane Johnson at some point, or maybe you go secondary and build up from there. But he loves edge players. He's drafted the Georgia Bulldogs defense of the last half decade. So you have Messafor from your University of Miami would be a decent pick there. You would fit perfectly with that defensive line. Or do you go the tight end route to know that Dallas Goedert only has 1 more year? I think he has a lot of options because he has a solid team. The defense is young but good, but the bill is coming due on a couple other players, so I would not be surprised if he reloaded on the D-line and or went and said, all right, this is it for Lane. We're going to go get an offensive lineman, Proctor out of Alabama, or the kid out of Utah, just to shore up when Lane's gone.
So let's go to the Cowboys here. The Cowboys have built some equity up here, getting at Micah Parsons trade. Couple first-round draft choices. They've got some equity now. It looks like actually they're heading in the right direction here. Where do you think Jerry Jones goes in the draft?
I think he's got to use both picks on defense. That team last year makes the playoffs and potentially has a run if they had any semblance of a defense. Their offense was great, even with CeeDee Lamb missing some time. You got to build up the defense. They traded for Rashawn Gary. I think that's a good first step, but you could use another cornerback to complement Bland and Durant. You could use another edge guy, maybe a Kevin Falk out of Auburn, but you need defense. They traded Micah Parsons. That's a big hole. You saw it last year. They need to spend both picks. They got 12 and 20. Defense, and more defense, because if that defense is good, you're looking at a team that could potentially contend next year. And you say that laughing because it's the Dallas Cowboys, but that is what they're missing. Their offense is good.
Speaking of laughing, let me go to the Jets here. When your most famous people on the planet are Fireman Ed, a guy who hits his head with a hammer every day when you see Sundays. And also, they haven't had a quarterback since Namath. Speaking of moonshots, I know we sent a guy to the moon. We're sending people to the moon. The Jets haven't been that good since we had a guy land on the moon. What do the Jets do here with Woody Johnson and his guys? I mean, what and where do they go?
They need a lot, and they do have 2 first-round picks due to the trade, so they have a 2 and a 16. I think you got to go quarterback, even though I'm not sure that they're going to win over the crowd and the fan base with Ty Simpson, because Mendoza's going 1. You still need a quarterback somewhere, and if you don't want to spend the 2 pick on a quarterback, then I would go get Reuben Bain from your Hurricanes. I would get him. He's just a beast. I love everything to do with that player. I'd be really excited if he fell to 11 to the Dolphins, but that's not happening. You could go Reuben Bain, maybe a stretch for a wide receiver. They're in a tricky spot because they don't have the quarterback that they want, but they need one. Geno Smith is not going to be the answer.
All right, so the national debt right now is on your salary cap with your Dolphins. Yeah. I mean, where do they go in the draft?
I mean, when I said blow it up, they blew it up. And they're paying the whole national debt for players not on their roster. I mean, they're paying more for no players than the Marlins' entire roster the last 2 years. You got to go secondary. I know they need a receiver now that it's me and you out there playing wide receiver with Hill and Waddle gone, but you can't go wide receiver with the 11 pick. There's nobody that good. So I think you go secondary. You got to replace Minkah Fitzpatrick. I think they're going to get the Tennessee kid McCoy and play him there at corner. They could go line again and linebacker because they need to shore up. They've lost Bradley Chubb. They've lost others, but they got Chop Robinson. I'm going to say that with the 11 pick, they go secondary, and then early second round, you pick the best wide receiver that did not go in the first round because, again, you're not going to be one throwing to Dan and Dave out there.
All right, 30 seconds. Is Fernando Mendoza the number 1 overall pick?
Yeah, he's the number 1 overall pick. He's going to go number 1 overall, period. Does that mean he's worth the number 1 overall pick? Does that mean he's a guy who plays like a number 1 pick? That verdict is still out, but he will be the number 1 pick. It's one of those things where you wouldn't even waste your time betting against it. He'll go number 1. Brady wants a quarterback. Raiders need a quarterback. And Kirk Cousins is not the guy. Maybe he can tutor Mendoza, but you're not winning anything with Kirk Cousins.
No way. Columbus High, by the way, Fernando Mendoza down in South Florida. NBA playing politics next right here on SportsGrid.
Bad franchises do bad things, Kevin. You know what I'm saying?
You know what, though, man?
The
His
Cleveland
team.
Browns. Todd Monken missed the NFL head coach's photo shoot because the guy was getting his hair cut.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
I
You're on
mean-
the cover of the season, coach? You're sitting next to Andy Reid, bro. Put on a golf shirt, shut up, and sit down. Oh, I got to get my hair done.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Urging them to stop offering these certain sports-related contracts if the leagues are especially ripe for manipulation. These are markets like what is someone on the broadcast going to say during the game, which you can bet on. It's called mention markets, which could be anything like Tom Brady saying, "Oh, I think that they're going to run an RPO."
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
As a former pitcher who thought the umpires were wrong far more than people let on, I like the ABS system. But you're going to have problems because umpires are going to start having issue with the fact that they're being called out. Well, here's the thing. Umpires are now going to be treated like players. They're going to get publicly embarrassed when they make mistakes in front of the fans.
Outspoken with Dan Sileo. Only on SportsGrid.
Massive shift in the sports landscape that the national media desperately does not want to admit. And I am talking about Major League Baseball officially overtaking the NBA as the second most popular sport in America. And the momentum has completely flipped. Numbers don't lie.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
So the NBA once again is playing politics here. And I want to make this very clear, and I want to underscore something before we even get into this topic. I personally don't care what your sexuality is. I don't care what your politics is. And I don't care what your religion is. That's not what this show's position is. Okay? This is not what we do. I don't tell you to take COVID shots. I don't tell you to do any of that. That's what not my show is set up to do. But I will broach this topic here with Jaden Ivey and the NBA. So Jaden Ivey was fired basically for conduct detrimental to the Chicago Bulls because he had an issue when it came to Pride Month. Once again, I want to underscore this. I don't care what your sexuality is. That has no bearing on my life, and it really doesn't have any interest for me when we come to talking that type of topic because personally, I don't care who you are in life or what you want to be or what you want to do with your life. I personally do not care. But at the end of the day, if you've got a statement, if you've got a comment, and you have an opinion, you're telling me that's conduct detrimental to your team when you've still got Chauncey Billups tied in with the Portland Trailblazers as the head coach. He's not coaching now because of the investigation of the FBI looking into illegal gambling with the mafia. He's still, and that's not conduct detrimental to the sport. And you have a guy that made a comment about Pride Month and you fired him for it. Okay, like I said, everybody has the right to their own opinions. Now, here's what the First Amendment doesn't cover: consequences. You know, everybody goes around this country and says this: I have a freedom to say whatever I want. You sure do. You, without a doubt, have an opportunity to say whatever you want, but you also have to deal with the consequences. I've dealt with consequences before in my life. Hell, I get conversations all the time from my bosses here about some of the things that we put up there on X and the ramifications, consequences. This is what the First Amendment doesn't. You can go around in any business you want, and if you think that you're going to get up and you're going to go and make a comment with your political, your sexual, or your religious convictions, and you think that that company's not going to sit there and fire you, those are consequences. Hey, my wife used to say this to me all the time when I had a topic. Hey, that's a great position you're taking. What a great platform. Too bad you're not working on Monday now. This is the consequences you take when you make those First Amendment choices that you're going to make a statement. Hey, Jaden Ivey, at the end of the day, has every right to do whatever he wants. But the NBA also has the right to do this. Not in my building, not in my place. And conduct detrimental, that's, I think, a little bit of a stretch. But there's no question. You can't go into private businesses and make your own statements when it comes to your political convictions and start throwing the First Amendment right around. That's not how this works, folks. You bet. In this country, one of the coolest things on the planet, you know what we have? We have the ability to be a jerk in this country. That's one of the great things. You have the ability to do stupid things. That's what makes America great. But consequences are what people seem to miss. They think consequences are covered when people make statements like this. Well, end of the day, they're not. They're not. You make these political comments, whether it's about sexuality, whether it's about religion. Take a look at what the National Football League does. So the people were kneeling on the sidelines, right? Well, we're going to get David Hill up next here in a minute. And guess what? When advertisers start calling the National Football League and it starts denting the shield, what did the networks do? They stopped airing the national anthem and they stopped showing the players on the sidelines. Why? Because when you start affecting the number one thing that makes the NFL roll, that's their cash register. That's the only thing those 32 sharks care about. They care about the economics of the sport. They don't care about any of that other things. What moves the needle is gambling right now and also the revenue that they're getting from the television networks and also from advertisers. The National Football League cares about two things, folks. Has nothing to do with ratings. It has nothing to do with race. Has nothing to do with religion. Ratings and revenue. Nobody cares who your friends are in that business. They only care about ratings and revenue. What is moving the needle? And when you got someone like Jaden Ivey kind of hindering that and hitting the shield of the NBA, no way, man. Remember, Michael Jordan made a great comment back in the day. Republicans buy sneakers too. And that's the one thing I think the NBA misses. Hey, you can have your political agendas all you want, but Republicans buy sneakers too. When you're alienating half of your viewership, you want to know why the NBA ratings are down? Right here. Don't pick a side. You're selling tickets. You are there to make as many eyeballs possible to watch your sport. We are going to talk to one of the greatest programmers in television broadcast history. I had the privilege of knowing Roone Arledge, and I have the privilege of knowing this man next. The founder of Fox Sports, David Hill, next. Right here on SportsGrid.
So much to get into.
So much to get into, so little time. Listen, this is a time of year where it's great basketball. Teams that have to be at their best. Some teams at their best for 40 minutes. Some teams at their best for 36 minutes. But at the end of the day, you got to play your best 40. Otherwise, you're going home like we saw over the last couple of days.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
Why are all these contracts being signed, folks? Yes, the players are talented. Yes, they are deserving of it, but it's such goodwill to hand out these buyout arbitration contracts for these young players this time of the year, right before opening day, to get all their fans excited. And notice, right before the Pirates' home opener, not before opening day, before their home opener, to set up.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Kansas City trading as a favorite, Joe. Do we think that's the possibility of that first game?
Yeah, they should make it the Jets, Donnie, so they can guarantee a win in front of their fans to open up the set. I'm just saying. That's what I would do. But no, ideally, the NFL would love a Kansas City reunion at Buffalo in the new stadium.
Prediction Markets Edge, only on SportsGrid.
There's a basketball player who's 7'9". He's insignificant on his team. And quite frankly, I don't know if he goes Division 1, 2, or 3 at this point and will be significant. Joe, how can you be 7'9" and not be able to get on the court in college basketball? Shouldn't he be maybe, I don't know, the most dominant shot blocker in the history? I watched Manu Bol be a really good player at times in the NBA.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
You know, one of the greatest things I've had happen in my life back in the day, I had a chance to be really brought into the business by Jim McKay and Rune Arledge. Those were the guys that really helped me get into broadcasting. And a guy that I became friends with, believe it or not, because of his Nebraska love, and he loves the Cornhuskers here. And he's also the founder of Fox Sports. The legendary David Hill joins us now here. And David, I was at a conversation with Jimmy Johnson, and he asked me to tell you the stories. And how did you get Jimmy to join the NFL on Fox?
Well, it was my father always said that it's much better to be lucky than smart. And the situation with Fox NFL Sunday and Jimmy Johnson falls into the pure luck category. Ed Gorin and I were down in Orlando for the NFL owners meeting when the contretemps happened between the two legends, Mr. Jones and Mr. Johnson. And 2-3 days later, Jimmy was, how to put it nicely, a free agent. I was in New York. Ed Gorin rang and said, I'm on my way to Dallas. And I said, good luck. And the reason for that was that the whole premise of Fox NFL Sunday, it had to have three parts. It had to have an offense, which was obviously Terry Bradshaw, needed to have a defense. But the key was to have a coach, to understand strategy. Because without that coach's perspective, that you don't really get the overall view. And all coaches, especially Jimmy Johnson, are great teachers. And so I realized that if we were lucky enough to get Jimmy, so Jimmy decided that he would join Fox NFL Sunday, but not really. And this is, so he wanted to stay down in Esmeralda. And so he started on Fox NFL Sunday. We had this studio, and there's Jimmy in front of a tank full of tropical fish. And then eventually we got him in the studio, and then he got antsy, right? He got antsy sitting there, and I could tell he was starting to get antsy. And he got offered the gig as coach down at the Dolphins, which he took. And so off he goes to coach at the Dolphins. We made alternate arrangements. But Jimmy's, as you know, Jimmy is absolutely unique. He is, like I've always said, put Jimmy Johnson in as a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and you would improve its profits by 5%. He has this incredible mind for getting to what's right and what's wrong. And then he can look at a picture and say, that's missing, and go fix it. So I was missing him dreadfully because we did not have the sage strategy that Jimmy would bring to every game. And so he's coaching. I don't think he was having that much success with the Dolphins. So I got Mike Berger, one of our top researchers, to start finding stories about coaches who had died from heart attacks. And we found a newspaper in every country around the world. And I ended up with this thing, story after story after story of Coach Smith, 47, heart attack. Coach Brown, 51, out he went, heart attack. Coach Smith, 41, boom, heart attack. So I've got this thing and had it special delivered, not to Jimmy at all, to Mrs. Rhonda Johnson. And I just and said, Rhonda, darling, I've just sent you a little bit of light reading material, and love Jimmy to come back to the show. Jimmy came back to the show. What can I say?
Absolutely. When Rupert Murdoch came to you, and said that he wanted you to start Fox Sports. How daunting of a task was that for you to start what we see Fox Sports is today?
Well, it was given that at that stage I knew my knowledge of American football you could write in the back of a very small stamp. I'd seen one game of football. That was my wife is from Nebraska, and we'd gone to. I was working in London, setting up Sky Sports and the EPL and all that. And we'd been to see one game, and I said, "So what am I looking at here?" She said, "Watch that guy. He's the quarterback, and he'll make the play." So that was my understanding of American football. So when Mr. Murdoch, and I loved being in London. I had the time of my life. We'd got the EPL up and running. We'd started to turn a profit. It wasn't kind of like you weren't worrying about making payroll. It's like it's so funny now. Anytime any HR comes to you and says, "Oh, well, look, we're a bit worried about morale," and I would say, "Can we make payroll next week?" They go, "Yeah." I said, "There's no morale problem. Morale problem is when you can't make payroll next week and you don't know how you're going to do it." So I was, the word terrified doesn't sum it up. Not only that, Fox had nothing. They didn't have a logo. And I had to get it up and running in 6 months. So, so I look back, and it was terrifying. It was exhilarating. It was fun, and you couldn't second guess yourself.
Man, incredible that you were there with that role there. How important was Madden and Summerall getting those guys to the NFL on Fox?
Overall, I think that the role of the commentator is so vitally important in sports. And without a doubt, John and Pat were so far in front of any other broadcast teams because John Madden was a remarkably intelligent and a remarkable human being, John. I don't think anyone realized the depth of the way his mind worked. So for us, it was vitally important because, like, quite rightly, I'll tell you a quick story about NFL and Fox. My father-in-law, Wilbur Bakey, rang me up from Omaha, and he said, "David, what's going on? What's this NFL on Fox?" And I said, "Well, yeah, Wilbur, I'm coming out." And he said, I don't get Fox on my cable system." I said, "But you will come the start of the season." So Fox went from this tiny little, like 50% coverage to 100% coverage. No one took it seriously, quite right too. But as soon as we got John and Pat and people like Terry and Jimmy and Howie Long, that all of a sudden it was, this is real. This isn't going to be The Simpsons. This is going to be like a decent broadcast.
Man, without a doubt, obviously it has gone on to be the #1 pregame show in all of football when you look at the NFL on Fox. By the way, they just celebrated a couple years ago 30 years of what David did here. And David, when we come back, we're going to spend a little bit more time on what the future of what we're going to see with streaming. We're also going to talk a little bit about network television. Again, we have a great opportunity here, folks. I mean, no question about it, man. When we look at the scenario there, what's broadcasting today and where streaming is going, folks, there's a reason that the National Football League is going down that lane. When it comes to streaming now, you're seeing Netflix, you're seeing Prime Video, you're seeing all of these other avenues that you're seeing the NFL go down. The National Football League now makes, for every football team, an addition of nearly $600 million in television when it comes to per team. And man, make no mistake about it. So we're going to talk more with the legendary David Hill and also his F1 experience and get his thoughts down that lane. We will talk with him and get his opinions on that. David, F1, we're going to do that as well. I can't wait to talk to you about the F1, man. That's really great stuff. Hey, folks, make sure you understand this man's starting his clock. Do that next.
You wouldn't have your ex officiate your wedding.
Do you, Jake? Liar, cheater, gaslighter.
So why have anyone but America's largest injury law firm handle your injury case? With over $30 billion recovered for our clients, there's a reason to go big.
Gaslighter, coitus crier, he's got more red flags than a bullfighter's attire.
Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm.
How much do you think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too? And what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago, how much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Sileo, only on SportsGrid.
Well, I ended up adding this since our show started here, Rohit, but his points prop tonight at 20.5 is the same number from the Iowa State game. That's a bit of a mistake, right? When we consider the gap in opponents here, I think Peterson specifically steps up. He needs to. I think he kind of owes this team a great performance.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
I know that Florida lost at home to Auburn, and it's a real thing that happened. So you can't strike it from the record. But if you did, I think Florida's looked like the best team in college basketball for about 2 months. And I think there are a bunch of results that suggest that.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
More with the legendary David Hill here. We were just talking about our time there in Pico, and I was on Fox Sports Radio. We just started it, and I remember the Fox guys and George Greenberg came down, and he was trying to tie in both the television, he was trying to tie in the radio together, and they would have me do the Best Damn Sports Show. And David, you wrote that show, and you initially wrote it for.
Well, I tell you, I wrote the show. The show originally came out of a show I did in Australia that became hugely popular. And you've always got to have someone in mind when you write the show. And I wrote it for Terry. And I said to Terry, listen, I've written this show. And I tell you where we came up with a name. Scotty Ackerson, who produced Fox NFL Sunday. And we were sitting there, what are we going to call the show? And we went through it. And right at the end of the meeting, Scotty says, breaking for on his way out to grab a quick smoke, said, all we're trying to do is make the best damn sports show, period. And I said, that's the title. And he said, what's the title? I said, that's the title. Best damn sports show, period. So it was. It was a great show. And unfortunately, there was some economic hardship that meant that the show got canceled, but it never should have got canceled. I thought it was great. It was primarily, it's where Michael Strahan came from. That it was primarily a show where I could look at talent coming through and see athletes who were natural in front of camera. And Michael Strahan was just like so outstanding. And look what's happened to Michael. And that all started with Michael doing reps on Best Damn Show, whatever it was, Best Damn Sports Show, period.
Absolutely there. Hey, I talked to you a little bit about the streaming. How big do you think streaming is going to be moving forward in sports broadcasting? How big and do you think this thing is just going to continue to grow?
Let me tell you a quick story about why it happened. And it all has to do with Neil Austrian, who was president of the NFL, and the great Paul Tagliabue, the commissioner. Paul rang me in, I think, 1998, and he said, you got to come to New York. And I said, Paul, for me to come to New York, it's like 3 days out of my week. I've got to fly and da-da-da. He said, it's important. So what they'd done back in 97, 98, the National Football League had done their first survey. Now, don't forget, Neil Austrian was a great advertising man, and the first thing he did was wanted to know what the market is. So he did the first survey, and Paul said, of all the things we found out, the single most important fact was that only 2% of our audience have ever been to a football game. And I said, what? And he said, mathematically, figure it out. 30 teams, 8 home games, 50% season ticket holders. He said, so only 2% of Americans have been to a game. So America gets its football fix through television. And it was that moment that the NFL realized they weren't a sports organization, they were a media conglomerate. And if you look from that point on, and guess who Paul's number 2 was? Roger Goodell. So Roger has kind of taken that learning back from the late 90s through to where it is now. So, of course, that the next step is going to be network television. And where's the money going? And where are we going as an audience? And I tell you why. We're all programmers. Like back when you and I were kids, well, admittedly, when I was a kid, there was no electricity. It was so long ago. But we were slaves to the programmer. If we wanted to watch a show, we had to tune to CBS at 8 o'clock or NBC at 8:30 or whatever. We had the VHS, and then we had TiVo, and now with the streamers, we're all programmers. We want to watch a show when we want to watch it, and we want to watch it in our time. Even with TikTok and Instagram, and like you're scrolling, and unless something's got you in 3 seconds, you're off. So we are all become programmers, and it's up to the media business to satisfy us. So that's why the NFL is now so huge. Like I think 92 out of the top 100 shows. When we started in 94, the top NFL game rated like number 22. Now, out of 100, it's 93 because it is like as Don Ohlmeyer came up with the line, must-see TV. Simple as that. And so what will happen is ultimately it will move. It has to move to streamers.
So do you think then that network television, like the normal networks like NBC, CBS, and ABC, you think they're in trouble?
And Fox.
And Fox. You think they're in trouble?
I think, well, define trouble. It's what you can see the NFL doing is that they're cherry picking, and they're taking a game here and they're taking a game there, and that ultimately, now don't forget that the great mind who decides what they're doing is Howard Katz. Well, actually, I think Howie's just retired. But one of their key strategy, their secret weapon, was the way Howard would be able to come up with a matchup in a key television spots, which made every game on TV worth watching. And so that obviously Howard has trained a whole bunch of people and like 20 computer systems. And so they're going to, that I think that if I was in their situation, I'd have some games on network television, some games on streaming, and then you got to see where the money goes. And you got to see where the audience goes.
In a minute, what's next for David Hill?
I'm doing some work with the brilliant. What next for me is getting over this bloody cold. It's like and hanging around like bad relatives.
David, I'll tell you what, anything you put your hands on though, but is there something you're lining up in 10 seconds here? Are you lining up anything?
It's like F1 to me was kind of like, I was so proud of what we were able to achieve, and to turn with Chase Carey and some remarkable people to take Formula One, which was dying, and within 3 years, totally turn it around, which is going to be interesting because they've gone to streaming to see what happens to F1 in 3 years on Apple. Question mark.
Man, I can't wait to see. David, thank you so much, man. What a great conversation we had. Get over your cold. Hey, I pester you enough. I end up getting you when I can. Thank you so much, my friend. And we're going to be, by the way, Miami and Nebraska playing in 2 years, so we have to contact each other then. Thank you so much, David. I appreciate you. Final thoughts. We'll do that next, right here on SportsGrid.
So much to get into.
So much to get into, so little time. Listen, this is a time of year where it's great basketball. Teams that have to be at their best, some teams at their best for 40 minutes, some teams at their best for 36 minutes. But at the end of the day, you got to play your best 40. Otherwise, you're going home like we saw over the last couple of days.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
Why are all these contracts being signed, folks? Yes, the players are talented. Yes, they are deserving of it, but it's such goodwill to hand out these buyout arbitration contracts for these young players this time of the year, right before opening day, to get all their fans excited. And notice, right before the Pirates' home opener, not before opening day, before their home opener, to set up.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Kansas City trading as a favorite, Joe. Do we think that's the possibility of that first game?
Yeah, they should make it the Jets, Donnie, so they can guarantee a win in front of their fans to open up the set. I'm just saying. I mean, that's what I would do. But no, I mean, ideally the NFL would love a Kansas City reunion at Buffalo in the new stadium.
Prediction Markets Edge, only on SportsGrid.
There's a basketball player who's 7'9". He's insignificant on his team. And quite frankly, I don't know if he goes Division 1, 2, or 3 at this point and will be significant. Joe, how can you be 7'9" and not be able to get on the court in college basketball? Shouldn't he be maybe, I don't know, the most dominant shot blocker in the history? I watched Manu Bol be a really good player at times in the NBA.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, so I'm going to go down this lane here on two legendary franchises that are called at one time the gold standard in sports. The Pittsburgh Steelers and the New York Yankees. And this is where we are. First, the Steelers. You know, it used to be a time when the Pittsburgh Steelers were gauged by Lombardi trophies. No coincidence that that franchise has like the most Super Bowl trophies of any franchise in the NFL's history since the Super Bowl era, right? So now they're just not the same. Winning just and being not having losing seasons is now the gold standard in Pittsburgh. Making sure you're 500 and that's cool with Pittsburgh, that's not a Super Bowl team. That's a decent roster. What has happened to Pittsburgh? Pittsburgh was one of those gold standard teams that you looked to, that you knew were going to always be in the conversation and trying to hang an AFC championship flag or winning a Super Bowl. Now, it's going 9-8. That's not a franchise moving anywhere. Look at the transition that they've had from quarterback when it comes from when it goes to Ben Roethlisberger. What, Mason Rudolph? A 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers? The football team is going nowhere. You hire a regurgitated Mike McCarthy? You know, you're going through the recycling now of coaches. You get off of Mike Tomlin. Where's the Steelers going? You're not a good team anymore. You're kind of good. That franchise used to be at the front and center in pro football every year. When you were talking Super Bowl contenders, the Steelers were a predominant name that you put out there in front. What's happened? Their standard has fallen. They're just decent. Let's go to the Yankees now. You know, when I grew up and Mr. Steinbrenner bought the team, there's no doubt he transformed that team from being the laughable losers that they were when CBS owned them. And he bought that team in 1973. George Steinbrenner turned that Yankee franchise into must-watch television, the Bronx Zoo. You had drama, you had villains, you had everything. Reggie Jackson, you had Billy Martin, you had the Thurman Munson dynamic, you had everything going on all the way up until the Torrey era. It was must-see television. Steinbrenner didn't spare any expense when it came to bringing the best players and the biggest drama into his sport and into his team. Yankee Stadium was a cathedral to go to and watch sports. The Yankees now, I mean, you're kind of good. Again, another franchise. And look, Hal Steinbrenner, that apple got thrown from the tree. It didn't fall next to the tree. It was thrown from the tree. When you keep a dude like Brian Cashman as your general manager, and that dude hasn't done anything in a decade, and you keep that guy as your GM, and you got a manager who has a losing record in the postseason as your manager and GM, the Yankees are happy with just 92 wins, 93 wins every year, and being decent. That's not the Yankees that I grew up with George Steinbrenner. I told you this last week. I knew Mr. Steinbrenner very well. And if he were to watch what's going on right now at Yankee Stadium, this guy would be throwing up on people. There's no way that he would tolerate that type of win. That's not winning, folks. That's okay winning. There was a standard that was set by Art Rooney with the Steelers, and there was a standard that was set by George Steinbrenner. The kids have destroyed that standard. Same thing, you could even make the conversation with the Lakers. Jeannie Buss has been a terrible owner. Besides that thing that they won with that Disney championship they won in Orlando, it's been the worst time in Laker history since they moved from Minneapolis. That's also a joke of a franchise. But Steelers and Yankees, dude, being okay, being decent, that's the standard now in Pittsburgh and in the Bronx, is just being okay. Man, at one time, that franchise, the New York Yankees, the pinstripes meant something. You know, when I was a kid, I grew up, you know what I wanted to be? I wanted to be the center fielder for the New York Yankees. Because to me, that was the biggest job in sports. Now, being a quarterback on any of the 32 teams in the NFL, being a starting quarterback in Nashville is bigger than being a center fielder in the Bronx in New York. Being a player now on Pittsburgh doesn't have the same flash it once did. Dude, Art Rooney and George Steinbrenner Sr., those guys got to be looking down now at those franchises and going, welcome to the world of mediocrity. Because that's what you have with those two franchises. One's not a Super Bowl contender, and the other one, it's just not a World Series contender. They're pretenders. We'll see you tomorrow. Dave Cap. See you on the break.